Chapter 1. The Throne Beneath the Black Sea, the Drowning of Samara. The thought that does not die, his breath in the deep beneath, a sea, no longer named, where stars once touched the water with silver light. There lies a throne that no one sits upon it, is not carved of stone or metal, but shaped from the memory of pressure, the weight of years, the hush of lost empires, and the drowning of a name once spoken in fear. The sea above it is black and still. No wind moves it, no creature crosses it. And beneath, in the silence where no song survives, rests the last breath of a god who would not die. Long ago, before the Empire, before the Jedi, before the Sith had taken their name, there was a place called It was a city of crystal paths and salt-born towers, suspended over the endless sea of a forgotten world. They say the people there listened to the stars, and in return the stars told them stories. They walked in light and shadow alike, never choosing, always balancing, but in time something deeper than darkness came. Not evil, not war, but hunger, the kind that dreams in silence and speaks through waiting. A child was born beneath the moon's eclipse, wrapped in water and cold flame. He was called the unmourned prince, for no cry escaped him. His eyes were open from the first breath, but his mother never saw them. She walked into the tide the same night, and the sea took her gently, as if she had always belonged there. The elders whispered that the child had no soul, that he was the return of something older than light. But still, they raised him, taught him the rituals of balance, the songs of wind and stone. Yet he never sang. As he grew, the sky grew quieter. The stars that once sang to Selmara faded, one by one, as if afraid of what now listened. And the boy, now a man, stood every evening at the edge of the tide, unmoving, unblinking, watching the sea for something no one else could see. When he spoke, it was never to the living, but to the depths. His voice stirred the air like a slow storm. Crops withered. The tide refused to come in. People began to leave, walking the salt roads toward exile, afraid of what their city had become. But some stayed. They believed he was a prophet, a vessel for the ocean's will. They called him the breathless king. He built no throne. He ruled no armies. Yet the sea obeyed him. Storms circled the city, but never touched its spires. Fish rose dead to the surface each morning, offerings without hands. The old songs were forgotten. In their place came silence. A new temple was built, not of stone, but of bone and coral, grown from the seabed by his breath alone. It pulsed like a heart when the moon was high. Then, one night, the city vanished. No fire, no war, no ruin, only stillness. Sailors who passed centuries later claimed to see towers beneath the waves, still glowing with blue light, unmoving and eternal. They spoke of a throne beneath the Black Sea, and a shape upon it vast and still, neither dead nor living, watching through the water. Some said they felt a voice in their minds, not words, but weight. The weight of something waiting. They say the throne was not made for power, but for silence, a place to listen to the thoughts that do not die. The breathless king had given himself fully to the ocean, becoming its memory, its hunger, its echo. In his final hour, he did not drown. He became the drowning, the still pull beneath all tides. The reason the sea sometimes forgets to breathe, now and then. When the stars are dim and the moon vanishes from the sky, the ocean falls unnaturally still. Birds flee, ships stop, and in the depths something shifts, not rising, not sinking, but watching. The Order once sent a seeker to find the ruins of Selmara. Only one returned, whispering of a song made of pressure and breath, and a throne that needed no ruler. He refused to speak again and vanished soon after, walking into the surf at dawn. Some believe the breathless king still waits, not for worship, not for war, but for memory, for someone to remember his name. And until that day, the sea holds him like a thought too deep to rise, too heavy to forget. The sea forgets many things, but not him. And so the throne remains unseen, untouched, beneath a sea without waves, a breath held in the dark. Chapter 2. The Veil of the Ashwalkers. The night the sky refused to burn, their eyes were fire and smoke. What waits beyond the dust? There was a night when the sky, heavy with stars, simply did not ignite. The usual blaze of distant suns, once alive and fierce, fell silent behind a veil of ash that stretched like a shroud across the heavens. Below, the world held its breath, draped in shadows that tasted of smoke and forgotten fires. This was the night when the Ashwalkers first rose, silent figures, moving through ruins where even the wind dared not stir. They were neither living nor dead, but echoes of flame and dust, bound to a forgotten fate. Their eyes glowed like embers, not warm light, but the cold, hollow flicker of things long consumed. The Ashwalkers had once been guardians, keepers of a sacred flame meant to burn forever. But the flame had died, and with it, the light in their souls. Now they drifted between worlds, caught in a dance of silence and shadow, waiting for a fire to reclaim them, or for the stars to awaken again. The land beneath their feet was scarred, blackened by wars whispered only in dreams. Ancient temples lay broken, pillars crumbled into ash, and the air carried the scent of sorrow, the heavy, lingering breath of things that had burned too brightly to last. Among these ruins, the Ashwalkers moved like ghosts, tracing paths no living eyes could see. Their presence a question whispered on the wind. The people who remained told stories in hushed tones, tales of nights when the sky refused to burn, when the stars blinked out and the world turned cold. They spoke of the Ashwalkers with a mixture of fear and reverence, as if these silent figures were both punishment and promise. Some said that in the deepest shadows of dust, a forgotten power waited, patient and hungry, ready to rise again, but the Ashwalkers held a secret deeper than the silence around them. Within their eyes, beneath the flicker of smoke, lay memories of a time before loss, before the flames fall. They carried the weight of forgotten prayers, songs sung to stars that no longer listened. Their steps stirred the ashes of hope and regret, weaving a tapestry of what once was and what might never be again. And in the stillness of those ash-covered nights, a question lingered. What waits beyond the dust? Is it the rebirth of light, or the eternal silence of a sky forgotten? The veil between worlds thins here, where fire has turned to ash and time has folded into itself. The Ashwalkers move quietly, shadows among shadows, guardians of a flame that may never burn again, yet cannot be extinguished. And so the night remains unbroken, the sky holding its breath beneath a veil of ash. The Ashwalkers walk on, their eyes like distant fires flickering in the darkness, waiting for a dawn that may never come. Chapter 3. When the first shadow spoke the silence in the stone temple, the dream of unlight, the whisper that taught. Dimin, the earliest quiet before light was named. There was a temple carved from ancient stone, set deep within the heart of a world forgotten by time. It stood alone, surrounded by mist and silence, a place where shadows gathered like water and waited. This was the temple where the first shadow spoke, not with words, but with breath, with the slow, soft pulse of something old and secret. Stirring beneath the stone, the temple had no doors, no windows. Its walls were etched with symbols that seemed to shift when no one watched. They told stories of unlight, the space between stars, and the quiet that comes before dawn. Here, seekers came not to find answers, but to listen to the whispers that floated just beyond hearing, to the memories trapped in stone and silence. They sat in stillness, their hearts beating in time with the slow rhythm of the temple's breath. It is said that on a night when the moon hid her face, a lone figure arrived. Wrapped in robes that carried the dust of distant worlds, he entered the temple's stillness and became part of its dream. He sat where no footprints were left, and the silence grew deeper around him, folding like a veil. In that sacred quiet, the first shadow awoke, its voice a whisper without sound. It spoke of balance, of the dance between light and dark, not as enemies, but as halves of a whole. It taught the figure to hear with more than ears, to see with more than eyes. The dream of unlight is not a place of darkness, but a space of potential, a canvas untouched by fire or frost. It is where beginnings and endings blur, where the breath of the force flows gentle and unseen. In this dream, the figure learned that shadows do not simply consume, they hold memory. They carry the weight of things hidden and forgotten, waiting patiently beneath the surface. As dawn approached, the whisper faded, leaving only a stillness that hummed with possibility. The figure rose, carrying the secret with him like a flame, held close in the palm. He left the temple untouched, but forever changed. The stone walls held their silence, but now it was filled with a new echo, the echo of the first shadow's voice, waiting to be heard again. And so the temple remains, cloaked in mist and silence, a place where shadows speak softly to those who listen. Its story is not told in loud words or violent acts, but in the quiet breathing between stars, in the spaces where light and dark meet and whisper their ancient song. Chapter 4. The Heart that fed on suns, the circle of pale kings, a crown of forgotten stars, the names carved in flame far beyond the reach of familiar skies. Where suns burn with a fierce and ancient light, there was a place known only in whispers. The circle of pale kings. These were not kings who ruled by sword or throne, but by the pulse of burning worlds, their power drawn from the very heart of stars. They wore no crowns of gold, but a crown forged of forgotten stars, their names etched deep into the flames that fed their endless reign. The land they guarded was a place of silence and fire, where ash floated like snow and the horizon shimmered with heat. Here the sky was never dark, for it was lit by 1,000 suns, each one a burning memory of a time when light was raw and wild. The circle of pale kings gathered beneath this eternal blaze, their faces pale as stone, their eyes reflecting the fire that gave them life and hunger alike. Legends tell of how they fed not on food, but on the energy of suns themselves, drawing strength from their light until the stars grew faint and tired. They were both creators and destroyers, their power a balance of flame and shadow. Their names were whispered like prayers and curses, carved into temples that glowed with heat and silence. Each name carried a story of hope, of ruin, of worlds, lost to fire and reborn from Ashdot. But the heart that fed on suns held a secret deeper than the light it consumed. It beat not with warmth, but with longing, the longing to become more than a flame, to find a breath beyond fire. The pale kings dreamed of stillness, of silence between the stars, a peace they could never reach. And so their crown was heavy, weighted with the burden of endless hunger and endless waiting in the glow of their realm. Time twisted and folded, and the past burned alongside the present. The circle remained, forever watching, their faces like pale moons in the heat, their eyes searching for a light that would not fade. They carried their names carved in flame, a reminder that even in the brightest fire, shadows are never far behind. And so the story lingers, like a star's dying pulse, a heart that fed on suns, yet longed for the quiet beyond all light. Chapter 5. His empire of bone and gold, the chamber of the thousand echoes, the mouth that devoured time. Their voices were made into towers in a place where the wind carried secrets like dust. There once stood an empire built not of stone or steel, but of bone and gold. Its towers rose like the ribs of a great beast, sharp and gleaming beneath a sky veiled in twilight. This empire did not shine with joy, but with a quiet hunger, a hunger that devoured years and memories alike, folding time into itself, until past, present, and future became one long echo. At its center was the chamber of the thousand echoes, a vast hollow where whispers of 1,000 lost voices gathered like a tide. They spoke in echoes that drifted endlessly, stories half-remembered, prayers unanswered, and names long swallowed by shadow. To enter this chamber was to step into a place outside time, where each breath might carry 1,000 lifetimes, and every silence held the weight of forgotten kings. The ruler of this empire was a figure shrouded in mystery, known only by the silence that followed his name. They say he built his kingdom from the bones of giants and the gold of fallen stars, weaving their remnants into towers that stretched beyond the clouds. His mouth was said to devour time itself, swallowing the hours and days so that none could tell when his reign began or if it would ever end. His voice was never heard, but it was felt, a pulse beneath the earth, a shadow cast by the sun. The people of this empire were like echoes themselves, their lives folded into the endless cycle of rise and fall. Their voices were made into towers, their memories etched in gold that shimmered like fire but turned cold to the touch. They walked among bones that whispered and halls that held their breath, never quite awake, never fully asleep. Yet beneath the empire's gleam and hunger lay a deep sorrow, the sorrow of voices lost to silence, of names forgotten beneath the weight of gold and bone. The empire fed on its own memory, growing stronger even as it crumbled from within. A kingdom held together by echoes and shadows, and so the empire stands still in the quiet between worlds, a place where time is both prisoner and king, where the whispers of 1,000 lost souls linger beneath towers that reach for a sky that will never answer. Chapter 6. The mirror that bled memory reflections from the broken age, the faces that were not his, he who watched himself fade there. Exists a mirror unlike any other, crafted not of glass, but of forgotten light and shadow, suspended in a place where time fractures and bends. It is said to bleed memory, each drop a fragment of lives once lived, faces once known, and moments slipping away like dust through open hands. This mirror reflects not what is, but what was and might never be, again a silent witness to the broken age it inhabits. Long ago, in the days before names hardened into legend, a man stood before this mirror, seeking not his own face, but the many versions of himself scattered across time's fractured waters. The mirror showed faces that were not his sequos, of choices unmade, paths unwalked, and shadows he carried deep inside. Each reflection whispered secrets in silent tongues, urging him to remember and forget, to hold and release. As he gazed, the lines between self and other began to blur. The memories spilled from the mirror's surface, flowing like a slow river of light and shadow, mingling with his breath, his thoughts, his very being. He watched himself fade and multiply, 1,000 selves lost in a sea of time. In this bleeding reflection, he found no comfort, only the quiet ache of loss, the weight of forgotten moments, and the unspoken truth that all who look too deeply risk becoming lost themselves. The mirror held its silence, neither condemning nor forgiving, simply bearing witness to the endless unraveling of memory. It whispered a sacred sorrow, a reminder that to remember is also to forget, and to see is to lose what once was whole. The man turned away, carrying the mirror's burden within him, heart fractured by reflection, a soul marked by the bleeding of time. And so the mirror remains, suspended in its broken age, bleeding memories like tears into the void. It waits for the next to look, to lose, and to become part of the endless, silent echo of all that was and could never be again. Chapter 7. The Temple That Remembered Death, the 13th Gate, a Song, Beneath the Stone, Ashes in the Offering. Bold, there is a temple lost beneath layers of dust and shadow, resting where no foot dares linger long. They call it the Temple That Remembered Death, a place not of fear, but of quiet reverence. Its stones carry the weight of centuries, whispering the final song of those who have passed beyond, a melody folded into silence and ash. It is a sanctuary where life and death are not opposites, but breaths in the same eternal rhythm. At the heart of this temple lies the 13th Gate, a threshold sealed with forgotten sigils and veiled in mystery. Few have seen its form, fewer still have felt the pulse that hums beneath it, a vibration like a slow heartbeat, steady and unyielding. This gate is said to lead not to another place, but to the memory of death itself, a passage where souls find rest or remain waiting in quiet shadows. Within these ancient halls, a song lives beneath the stone, a soft chant carried by the wind, barely heard yet always present. It tells of endings and beginnings entwined, of the cycle that neither stops nor slows. Ashes fill the offering bowls scattered through the temple, each grain a remembrance of a life once lived, a breath once taken. The air is thick with the scent of smoke and memory, heavy and gentle all at once. The keepers of this temple speak little, but their eyes hold the calm of those who have seen beyond. They understand that death is not a silence, but a voice, speaking softly through time's endless corridors. The temple remembers every passing, every farewell whispered in shadow and light. It holds these moments like fragile crystals, delicate and eternal. As night falls, the temple seems to breathe, its stones glowing faintly with the light of countless departed souls. The 13th Gate remains closed, waiting for the one who will walk through with open heart and steady step. Until then, the song beneath the stone lingers on, a quiet hymn of endings that are also beginnings, ashes that hold the spark of forever. And so the temple stands, a sanctuary of remembrance, where death is not feared but held, remembered in silence, honored in breath, and waiting, always waiting. In the stillness beneath the stone. Chapter 8. The Star that wept in chains before light was named. The ghosts that guard the sky, Her silence was the key long before light was named. Before the first dawn kissed the dark, there was a star, unlike any other a star, that wept in chains. It hung heavy in the silent sky, bound not by metal or stone, but by the unseen threads of sorrow and forgotten promises. Its tears fell slowly, tracing rivers of silver that vanished before they could reach the cold ground, carrying with them the weight of a grief too deep for words. This star was watched over by ghost-silent sentinels who drifted between worlds, guardians of the sky's most sacred secret. They bore no faces, only shadows, their forms flickering like smoke caught in the wind. Their duty was ancient, whispered in the winds that passed through forgotten ruins and lost temples. They waited, always waiting, to protect the stars, weeping heart from those who would seek to claim its sorrow as power. Her silence was the key. A figure cloaked in the softest night, she moved unseen among the ghosts. Her presence a quiet balm to the stars' endless mourning. She did not speak, for words would shatter the fragile balance held in the stars' tears. Instead, she listened to the silent song of loss, to the unspoken memories locked within the stars' chains, to the gentle pulse of something waiting to be freed. The stars' tears were more than water. They were the essence of forgotten hope, the memory of light that once was, and the promise of light yet to come. Each drop held a story of love lost, of dreams broken, of peace longed for but never found. Those who dared to follow the silver trails spoke of visions, glimpses of a time when chains would fall, when the star would shine freely, and when silence itself would sing. And so the star remains, weeping quietly in chains, guarded by ghosts and watched over by her silence. Its story is not one of triumph or despair, but of waiting, a sacred pause beneath the endless sky, a breath held softly in the dark. Chapter 9. The night the Force stood still, frozen. Breath of the Forgotten Ones. The hourglass of unbeing. Where the current broke there was a night unlike any other. Long before the stars took their places in the sky, before the rivers of the Force flowed freely through the galaxy, it was a night so deep and still that even the wind held its breath, and time itself seemed to pause. The ancient ones called it the night the Force stood stiller, moment when the endless current that binds all living things ceased its flow, as if the very breath of the universe had frozen in place. Imagine a silence so profound that it presses gently against the heart, folding the world inward until all that remains is a hush filled with weight and wonder. The night was like this, vast and quiet, stretched across worlds that had long since been forgotten. The stars dimmed, not out of fear or grief, but because the light itself awaited the awakening of something greater. In this stillness, the Force held its breath, suspended between what was and what might be, beneath this heavy sky. The Forgotten Ones, stirred beings, who had walked the currents of the Force before the dawn of known time. Their breath was frozen, their voices swallowed by the night, yet their presence lingered like a shadow just beyond sight. These ancient souls were the keepers of balance and memory, guardians of the sacred rhythms that govern all life. But on this night, even they were caught in the stillness, unable to move, unable to guide the flow. The hourglass of unbeing was said to mark this moment, a vast crystal vessel, suspended somewhere beyond space and time. Within its fragile walls, sands neither fell nor rose. They hung suspended, shimmering like stars trapped in a glass that neither cracked nor broke. This hourglass was not a tool of counting time, but a symbol of the pause between breaths, the space where being and unbeing meet. The sands waited silently, just as the Force waited, caught between worlds, in the heart of this night. Where the current broke and the river ran dry, a question hung in the air. What happens when the endless flow of life ceases? When the breath that connects all things stops, even for a moment? The answer was whispered in shadows and silence. It is in this frozen breath that the deepest truths are found. Here, in the stillness, the Force reveals its hidden face, not as energy or power, but as the quiet space between, the sacred pause that gives meaning to all movement. The worlds touched by this night were cloaked in an eerie calm. Forests stood frozen in time, their leaves suspended like fragile glass. Oceans ceased their tides, holding the last ripple in place like a secret. Even the creatures, great and small, lay silent beneath the starlight, caught in the delicate web of unbeing. It was as if the universe itself had folded in on itself, curling into a dream where nothing moved, yet everything existed. Those who would later come to understand that Paul spoke of this night as a reminder and ancient memory etched into the bones of existence. It was a night when the current that flows through all life was broken, not by violence or loss, but by the need to rest, to breathe, to remember. The Force, like the stars, must pause to gather its strength, to renew its song. And so, in its infinite wisdom, it chose to stand still, to listen to the silence and hold the breath of all beings. There is a soft lesson woven through this story, gentle echo that lingers long after the night has passed. It teaches that stillness is not emptiness, and silence is not absence. Instead, they are the spaces where healing begins, where the river finds its source, where the heart learns to beat steady again. The night the Force stood still as a sacred pause, a moment to honor the fragile balance between movement and rest, between becoming and simply being. Even now, in quiet moments beneath the stars, some say you can feel the echo of that night. A soft vibration in the air, a gentle pulse in the heart of the universe. It calls to those who listen not with words, but with a breath held just long enough to remember. It is a call to slow down, to rest, to find peace in the stillness that lies between all things. And so, as you drift into sleep beneath the silent sky, imagine the river of the Force, endless and flowing, pausing in its journey. Feel the frozen breath of the forgotten ones, the suspended sands within the hourglass of unbeing, and the quiet where the current broke. Know that in this sacred stillness, all is held tenderly past, present, and future entwined like the gentle folds of a soft, dark cloak. The night remains, always waiting, holding its breath until the river flows once more. And in this waiting, there is a promise of renewal, of light returning to the stars, and the endless dance of the Force continuing its eternal song. Chapter 10. The Crown of Black. Veins his blood in the root, the garden of dead emperors. They grew him from silence in a land where the earth itself whispered forgotten names. There grew a crown unlike any other a crown, woven not from gold or jewels, but from black veins that pulsed beneath the skin of the world. This crown was born from silence, nourished by shadows, and fed by a blood older than the oldest trees. It was a throne made not of power, but of waiting, a place where emperors long dead still held sway over roots that reached deep into forgotten soil. The soil here was dark and thick, rich with the ashes of forgotten rulers whose names had faded. Like mist, it was said that the blood of those emperors seeped into the earth, becoming one with the roots and veins of this garden and endless forest of shadow and stillness. Here, the air was heavy with memory, each breath carrying the weight of countless lifetimes folded beneath layers of stone and leaf. From this soil, they grew him an emperor not born of flesh, but of silence. No song announced his coming, no light heralded his rise. He was formed slowly, shaped by the patience of the earth and the quiet hunger of the roots. His veins were black rivers flowing beneath his skin, carrying the weight of all who had come before. His crown was heavy with unspoken promises and forgotten oaths. The garden of dead emperors stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of twisted trees and crumbling statues half swallowed by moss. Each emperor's spirit lingered here, entwined with the roots that held them captive and the shadows that whispered their regrets. Their voices were carried on the wind, soft and sorrowful, echoing through the branches like a lost hymn. They waited for the one who could carry their legacy, their silence, their crown. His blood in the root was a secret known only to the garden and the earth. It was a river of quiet power, slow and relentless, binding him to the past even as he reached toward the future. The crown he wore was not a symbol of victory, but a reminder of the price of waiting, the endless hunger that comes with holding too much, the loneliness that grows beneath the weight of unspoken words. In this place where the dead emperors dreamed beneath the soil, he walked alone, a shadow among shadows, carrying the silence of the ages within him. He did not speak, for words might shatter the delicate balance of the garden. Instead, he listened to the roots, to the veins that pulsed beneath his skin, and to the slow, steady heartbeat of the earth itself. And so the crown of black veins remains, heavy and waiting, growing silently from the blood of emperors long gone. It is a throne not built by hands, but by time and silence, a place where power and patience entwine like roots beneath the earth. Here, in the garden's shadow, the past and future meet in a quiet breath, waiting for the one who will wear the crown and understand the weight of its silence. Chapter 11. The Vault. Where time was buried, the clock that had no hands, a room made of lost moments. He waits for nothing, now deep beneath the shifting sands of a forgotten world. There lies a vault where time itself was buried. This is no ordinary place, but a chamber suspended between yesterday and tomorrow, a room made not of stone, but of lost moments, where the echoes of the past gather like dust, and the future remains just beyond reach. It is said that here, time does not flow as a river, but hangs still, folded into shadows and silence. At the heart of this vault sits a clock that has no hands. Its face is cracked and worn, yet it holds a strange light, a faint, flickering glow that seems to pulse like a heartbeat. This clock does not mark hours or days, but something deeper, the spaces between moments, the breaths that slip away unnoticed, the memories that fade before they can be grasped. It is a reminder that time is not always measured by movement, but by what remains when all else has stopped. The vault is filled with whispers, soft voices from the edges of memory, calling out to those who listen with quiet hearts. Each whisper is a lost moment, a smile that never reached eyes, a word that was never spoken, a touch that vanished too soon. These moments drift through the air like fragile petals, falling slowly and endlessly, never settling, never forgotten. He waits there lone and still within this room of lost moments. He is neither prisoner nor king, but a watcher of the silent tide. Time has no hold over him. He is both inside and outside its reach. His eyes are deep wells, reflecting every moment ever lost and every one yet to come. He waits not for the passing of time, but for its meaning to be understood. Around him, The vault hums with a quiet tension, the weight of all that once was and all that might be. It is a place of contradictions, where beginnings and endings blur, and where the line between memory and hope dissolves like morning mist. The clock that has no hands ticks in silence, a gentle reminder that even when time stops, life's stories continue to unfold in the spaces between dot and so the vault remains hidden beneath the sands, a sacred place where time's breath is held close and forgotten. It waits for the one who will listen to its silent song, who will understand that to lose time is not to lose life, but to find the stillness where true meaning grows. Chapter 12. The City Beneath. The Emperor's dream streets that walk in circles. The children with no names. The bell that never rings beneath a sky forever veiled in twilight. There lies a city forgotten by time and memory, a place where shadows drift like wandering souls, and the streets themselves seem to walk in circles. This is the city beneath the Emperor's dream, a realm woven from the silent echoes of a vision never fulfilled, where every stone and breath holds the weight of promises long broken. The streets wind endlessly, folding back upon themselves in patterns too complex to follow. They move like living things, shifting with the soft sigh of the wind and the faint pulse of a dream lingering just beyond sleep. Travelers who enter find themselves caught in the looping paths, walking forever without arrival, as if the city itself refuses to be seen or remembered. In this endless maze live the children with no names. They are not born in the usual way, but emerge from the silence. Shadows made flesh, reflections of hopes and fears whispered in forgotten moments. Their faces are pale as moonlight, their eyes wide and deep, filled with questions that have no answers. They wander the city silently, searching for something lost, something never truly held. At the center of this dream city stands a bell that never rings. It hangs heavy in the air, poised to sound but forever silent, a symbol of time paused and voices muted. The bell's silence is both a comfort and a curse, a reminder of the dream that birthed the city and the dream that remains unfulfilled. It holds the hope of awakening and the sorrow of endless waiting. The emperor who dreamed this city is gone, vanished into the folds of history and shadow, yet his dream lingers like a soft breath held just before sleep. His vision shaped the cities, stones, and silence, and in his absence, the city became a place between worlds, neither alive nor dead, neither beginning nor end. It holds the fragile line where memory fades and myth begins, and so the city beneath the Emperor's dream waits, a realm of looping streets and silent bells, where the children with no names search for meaning in the quiet dark. It is a place of gentle sorrow and lingering hope, a dream that drifts softly on the edge of sleep, waiting to be remembered once more. Chapter 13. The flame that forgot to die, lit by heretical hands, slash the ember that would not answer what burned without fire there, was once a temple deep beneath the scorched cliffs of a world no longer named. It stood like a wound in the stone, carved by those who dared to hold fire in their hands. The air within trembled with ash, and in its heart was a single flame, one that forgot how to die. The story says the flame was lit by heretical hands, not because they were evil, but because they remembered something the others had chosen to forget, a truth buried beneath light and dark. These hands, scarred by exile and guided by visions, kindled the flame in silence, offering no prayer, no vow, only breath. The fire did not roar. It simply breathed. It was not like other fires. It gave no warmth. It left no smoke. It danced not in orange or red, but in pale colors, soft blues, silvers, and a flicker of something unseen. Some called it an ember of the first thought, the breath of balance before the force had split itself into war and worship. Others said it was the soul of a world that had never lived. But when the Seekers came, those who wore the masks of Jedi and Sith, hungry for relics, the flame would not answer them. It refused their rituals. It flickered in defiance of their commands. It showed them not visions, but silence. And one by one they left, angered or afraid, or simply forgotten. Only one remained, a quiet one, without name, who knelt before the flame, not to control it, but to remember it. She brought no tools, no weapon, no command, only silence, only breath. And in return, the flame flickered softly, not brighter, not larger, but gentler, as if remembering something it had lost. That is how the legend ends. No war, no triumph, just a flame, forgotten by time, and a keeper who refused to leave. Even now, beneath the cliffs, the ember may still remain, not burning, but being. A fire without fire. A memory that refuses to fade. Chapter 14. The Choir. Of the unmade songs of those who never lived, the voice between voices, his harmony of hunger there, is a canyon hidden in the shadow of an ancient red star. It cannot be found by map or chart, for it hums in a place just slightly behind the world, a place not of stone or light, but of sound. The canyon is called Soluan's Mouth, though no one remembers who Soluan was. They only remember the echo and the silence that followed it. Here, in this impossible gorge, sound moves strangely. Whispers never end. Steps never fade. Songs drift through the stillness, not in words, not even in tones, but in the tremble of something once meant to be. The elders say it is where the choir of the unmade sings. Not ghosts, not spirits, but voices that never had bodies to begin with. Ideas that were never born. These voices do not speak in languages, they do not tell stories, but they sing, and in their songs there is longing, not for life, but for being, for the shape of presence, for the chance to exist. It is said that Dark Emperor once came here, not Vitiate, but one even older, a being so empty. He heard the choir and mistook it for a call. He stayed for 7 nights, each longer than the last, listening. The longer he listened, the less of him there was. Not in body, but in memory. His name began to vanish from the stones. His voice stopped echoing. His shadow began to curve the wrong way. And on the 8th night, he sang back. What followed was not music, it was hunger made sound, a harmony of forgetting. Those who stood outside the canyon felt the world go quiet. For one long breath, the stars seemed to flicker in confusion. A stillness heavier than gravity settled across the cliffs. When they entered the canyon again, they found no body, no dust, only a circle of black sand, and a vibration in the air that never stopped. And then the choir returned, their songs more layered, their harmonies more complete. For now they had a conductor, one who had given himself to the song, not as a master, but as another voice that had forgotten how to be whole. It is said, the canyon still sings, that if you stand long enough in the center, you will begin to feel the world move around you. Not wind, not time, but pressure. As though something beneath the veil of reality is listening back. And if you listen too long, you may forget your name. You may forget your shape. until all that remains is a hum, soft, steady, and endless. Chapter 15. The wound that became a throne, split by the will of the void. What he gave to the darkness, the throne that bled the world beneath the fractured moons of Calith, where the earth is scarred and the sky has forgotten how to heal. There lies a valley that was once a battlefield. No banners remain, no bones, no names. Only a vast wound carved into the land, a chasm that breathes when the stars fall silent. They say it was not made by weapon or war, but by a single act of surrender. One being cloaked not in power but in despair, gave his soul to the darkness, not to conquer, not to protect, but to become. He did not kneel before it, he opened to it, and in doing so, tore a hole in the force so deep that light itself hesitated. This being had no name, or, if he did, it was unspoken, carried away on the last breath of a dying world. He was not Sith, he was not Jedi, he was something older, a listener, a vessel, an echo made flesh, and when he gave himself to the void, the force bled, the wound did not close, it could not, because it was not a scar of the body, but of balance. Where once there had been harmony, now there was hunger. Where once there had been silence, now there was a pulse, low, steady, and wrong. At the center of the wound, something rose, not built, not crafted, but grown like a thorn from the heart of pain itself. A throne, they called it, though no king ever sat upon it. It was formed of black stone veined with crimson, shaped like ribs around a hollow center. When the wind moved through it, it sounded like breathing or weeping. Many came to see it. Seekers of truth, lords of fear, scholars of shadow, but none who touched the throne returned unchanged. Some spoke in languages no one knew. Some wept until their voices vanished. Others stared at nothing for days, as if listening to memories. Not their own, for the throne does not rule, it remembers. It holds the pain of all who have offered themselves to emptiness. Not as punishment, not even as warning, but as testament. The force, too, remembers its wounds. And so the valley became a silence, a place not feared, but avoided, as if the galaxy itself had turned its gaze from it, afraid of what it might see in its reflection. They say the being who opened the wound is still there, not alive, not dead, but part of the throne, part of the pulse beneath the stone, a will that became space, a sorrow that became shape. And when the stars flicker, when the moons shudder, when the force pauses in its flow, that is the throne. Remembering. Chapter 16. The forest of sleeping kings' roots carved in bone there. Dreams are tombs, / the crown lies beneath the leaves. There is a forest on the edge of the forgotten rim, where the suns rise only in silence, and the wind does not move unless watched. No maps name it, no creature claims it. It is not alive in the way other forests are, and yet it breathes slow, deep, and ancient, as though something beneath the soil dreams. Still, they say the forest was once a garden planted by a king, who feared death and planted trees instead of sons. Each tree was a monument to those he conquered, not to honor them, but to contain them. Roots were carved through bone, and bark was grown over memory. And in time, the forest grew wide, and the king grew still. But the forest did not forget. Those who wander its paths hear voices, but not as sound. The trees do not speak with words. They speak in memory, in weight, in presence. Some who enter feel joy, as though returning home. Others weep, though they do not know why. A few fall to their knees, whispering names they never learned. Beneath each tree a body lies, or what remains of one. Kings, emperors, lords of light and dark, their crowns long buried, their triumphs turned to soil, but their dreams remain. The force, drawn deep into their roots, cannot leave them, and so they sleep not in peace, but in stillness. The forest is thick with mist, a silver fog that clings to the ground like breath left behind. Time is different here. Hours feel like days, or moments. None who enter return with the same face. Their eyes see too far. Their skin hums with silence. There is a path in the center, overgrown with moss, where the trees grow closer together, twisted, leaning as though whispering to one another. At its end is a clearing where no light reaches, though the sky above is clear. And in that clearing is a stone, cracked and worn, shaped like a crown that has sunk halfway into the earth. They say the first king lies beneath it, the one who planted the forest, the one who buried his fear in every root. His soul wanders now, split among the leaves, caught between rain and ruin. Some believe he waits for someone to claim the crown. Others say he prays no one ever will. And so the forest remains, a dream of power now cradled by soil, a kingdom of sleeping kings, too proud to die, too tired to wake. Their thrones are trees, their graves are roots, and their legacies are whispers in the leaves. If you listen too long, you may dream with them. Chapter 17. The labyrinth of all his selves. Every step is a memory / the doors that open inward. The center that was empty there is a place buried beneath the bones of an old moon, where no stars shine and no path leads. True, it is not marked on charts, nor remembered in the songs of the stars, and yet, in moments of stillness, it calls, not with sound, but with presence, with longing, with something that feels like a name you've forgotten how to say. The labyrinth waits there, ancient, patient, folded in upon itself like thought turned inward. It has no beginning and no true end. Its walls are carved of stone older than the force, and every stone hums with memory. Some call it a maze, but it is not made to confuse, it is made to remember. Every step within the labyrinth is a step through what was, not the galaxy's history, but your own. Each corner turns into a vision, each hall echoes with a voice that might be yours, or might not. The ceilings shift, shaped by what you carry. The walls remember what you've tried to forget. It was built by one who had too many names, too many faces, a wanderer of the Force who peeled away his identities like layers of ash, hoping that what remained would be true. He was Jedi once, and Sith, and something in between. He spoke with prophets. He killed with silence. He loved once and broke it. And in the end he feared he was no one, and so he carved the labyrinth, not as a place to hide, but to know, to gather the echoes of every path he had walked, to see them all at once, to force the truth to show itself, but the Force does not reveal truth easily, and the deeper he walked, the more he fractured. Each turn split his soul again, a memory here, a regret there, a voice that would not quiet. Soon he walked beside himself, dozens of selves, hundreds, some whispering, some screaming, all reaching for the center, for the place where they believed peace might live. But the center was empty, not in despair, but in stillness. There was no throne, no truth, no name waiting to be reclaimed. Only a room of soft light and uncarved stone. No memory, no fear, just silence. A space untouched by self. And in that space, the wanderer wept. Not from sorrow, not from joy, but from release. He was never seen again. Some believe he became the labyrinth that his soul dissolved into its stones, so that others might find their own center. Others believe he is still walking, deeper and deeper, searching for the last door. It is said the labyrinth only calls to those who are ready to lose themselves, not in darkness, but in honesty, in stillness, in the letting go of masks, and so it waits, buried beneath the dust of the moon, holding the weight of 1,000 selves. Every step is a memory, every wall a mirror, and somewhere at the center, the silence that remains. Chapter 18. The name that ended galaxies, he spoke and stars fell. The scroll of black flame, there was no more breath to give it, is told in the quietest circles, not written, not sung, but breathed, that there once lived a being whose name was not a name, but a sound older than speech, a word not spoken with lips, but with the will of the force itself, a name so true, so complete, that to say it was to become it, and when it was spoken, the stars trembled. They say the being was not born as others are, not of blood, not of light, but from a fracture in the force, a place where balance could not hold, and something deeper slipped through. Some say he was the echo of an unfinished thought, others that he was the final breath of a forgotten God. Whatever he was, he did not belong, and yet he remained. He wandered between galaxies like a shadow with no tether, not building, not conquering, only listening. He listened to the pain of suns as they burned out, to the silence of worlds that had forgotten their own names. He listened until he began to change, until the sound of everything he heard shaped the silence within him, and in time he spoke, not often, only once, perhaps, but when he did, the force recoiled, the stars around him dimmed, the breath of the galaxy grew still, for the name he spoke was his own, and in speaking it, he revealed the one truth the force had hidden even from itself. It was not a name of power, not a curse, not a prophecy. It was a mirror, a reminder, a final truth that unraveled the illusions wrapped around light and dark. A name that ended galaxies, not through destruction, but through awakening. Some say his voice cracked the scroll of black flame, a relic buried beneath 10,000 vaults, sealed in time and ash. Others say the scroll was his voice, etched in fire so no one could forget. Few have seen it. Fewer still have lived. There is one account, kept in a chamber below the temple of unknowing, where monks speak only in dreams. It says, he did not end the galaxy. He ended what the galaxy believed about itself. After that moment, there was no more breath to give, not from him, not from the stars, only silence, wide and deep, like the pause before the next story, and so the name is lost, not to protect it, not to contain it, but because some truths are too complete to be carried. If you find the scroll, do not read it. Let it rest. Let it sleep in the dark, where words are still waiting to be born. Some echoes are not meant to return. Let the name remain unspoken. Let the stars remember what you cannot, and let the silence be enough.